Lutz, so you're here to talk to us today about some landscape photography, correct?
Yes. So I wanted to discuss about like my thought process in creating bodies of work, which I use for exhibits and competitions. So I thought, a lot of people have been asking me that offline, like how do I come up with like certain bodies of work and all that stuff. So I thought, why not use that as a topic? And of course, I'll present my screen. I created a presentation just so, for everyone's benefit.
Awesome.
Now, one second.
The floor is yours. Go ahead and share your screen and jump right in.
Cool. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Awesome. All right. So just to kick things off, I'd like to discuss like the presentation contents, of course. Like first, I'll introduce myself like really quickly. I know everybody's time is precious. And then we're going to discuss like where ideas come from, since the topic is about creating bodies of work. I'll show you a sample workflow. This is from shoot to edit, like preparing for a shoot and all that stuff. And then we'll go through Luminar AI, like the frequently used tools that I use for editing my images, some photography tips, and then I'll show you some sample works. These are bodies of work that I've created in the past, and then we'll go through Q&A.
Awesome.
All right. So quickly introduce myself. So I'm Marvin Gray. I have been active in the photography industry for about 3 years now. I started with street photography, funnily. So I delved into landscape just a few months after that. And so I like to join photography competitions just for fun. And I've had an exhibit back in 2019. So it was pretty fun experience for me as a newcomer in the industry. I just put like the type of camera here because people ask like what camera I shoot, but the focal length is the most important thing here. And then of course the ND filters. I shoot always at most of the time, around 80% of the time at 24 mm. So 16, 35, mostly I don't really use it. But just in a nutshell. So this is like me. I also like to print my works. And there are a couple of prints hanging around the wall in the house. So it is what it is. And I wanted to start this conversation by asking this question, like, what concepts speak to you? Like, what ideas do you want to materialize right now? Like, if you are going to shoot for photography, like, I know sometimes people just go out and shoot, right? But there are times that you think about something, use your imagination, all that stuff. And what are the concepts that you have been thinking about these past few days or these past few moments, right? I wanted you to focus on this question during this discussion. So, ideas can come from everywhere, right? So when I start creating bodies of work, I start with an idea, and mostly I get them from social media, books. I like pop culture a lot. I'm a huge comic book and movie fan. So I also like gaming. So a lot of my concepts are grabbed from those mediums. And of course, emotions can also be something that you would want to translate into a photo. Most of the time, like artists like myself, we don't really just settle with visuals. We make art that is I would say like that has a soul or speaks to the person who's viewing it. And then lastly, of course, artistic influences. Like it could be someone well-known like Ansel Adams, or it could be someone that you admire that you follow in Instagram, or it could just be someone that you had the pleasure of shooting with, that you admire the work. So, these ideas can come from a lot of sources. So this is the first thing that I try to determine when I am going to create a body of work for either an exhibit or a competition, or sometimes even just for fun, right? If there's an upcoming trip, this is the first thing I try to determine. So once you've determined that, the first one is pick a concept. So this is my typical workflow into going from shoot to edit or output. Once I pick a concept that I want to start with, I try to do my research. Like if I have that concept, like what do I need to shoot to achieve that kind of output, right? how do I shoot it? Like in this example, right? So this background image, I mean, I'm pretty sure you see the background image. This is part of a series of body of work called From Memory. So this is an experience I had around more than 10 years ago in Singapore, and I wanted to like capture that and put that into something tangible, like a photo. So if this is the example of the concept, right? I did my research, like what would I shoot that would depict best? And this is like structures and places I've been to in Singapore. Like how do I shoot it is the second one. It could be like long exposure. It could you could also consider the time of day, the weather, all sorts of things that come up to make sure that you get the output that you want. And then of course where to shoot it. You know, I started marking maps and planning the places where I have to be in order to shoot these images. And then lastly, of course, you know, you have to go out there and make sure you have the stuff that you need, like ND filters. In my case, like if you're into landscape photography, of course, you need ND filters for these long exposure shots, extra batteries. Of course, you need remote trigger. Don't ever forget that, because I keep forgetting that when I was still starting out. And then, you know, if you're into portraits, you know, I'm pretty sure it's lighting, it's stage design, you know, if you have a conceptual shoot and all sorts of things. And lastly, of course, you need to learn how to process it. So do your research. Like, how do I come up with the output that's in my mind? Like, for example, the background image right here, it's not just your typical black and white image. I did some split toning here. I put like a little blue and a little sepia tone on the highlights and a little blue on the lowlights. So I wanted to kind of depict something that if you pluck something from my memory and put it in an image, it would look like this. So I learned how to process it that way. Of course, you know, when you do your research, the next one you do is to create a plan out the logistics, and then make sure you have all your resources. It could be gear. It could be like knowledge resources, like you make sure you have a list of stuff that you need. And a playlist is something that I think is something personal for me, which I would like, you know what, I'll discuss it, right? Playlist for me is kind of like something that is an add-on to my trips. I titled the playlist based on the bodies of work. So I try to listen to the music as much as I can before going to the trip, while planning, and onto the trip, like in the car, and even while shooting. This gives me like, you know, for some reason, it gives me it helps me relive the feeling whenever I'm trying to edit it. So when I listen to the playlist while I'm editing, it gives me like sort of like some part of the experience, which gives the image a much more personal and artistic note. So that's where the soul comes in, right? Like it's not just an image anymore, because it's part of your experience. You put your heart and soul into that image. So I just wanted to like add that up, because I think it's also something a lot of people do, but they don't really recognize. So after you create a plan,
that's great.
yeah. So after you create a plan, of course, you try to execute the plan, or as much as you can. You know, you have to be ready with a lot of the setbacks. Like if the weather doesn't go your way, even if you research the weather, I mean, I try to research the weather as much as I can. Sometimes it still doesn't, you know, it doesn't go through. So I have to like create plan Bs. And then, you know, in terms of the shoot, like on the day, you know, make sure that you stick to your time. If you need to wake up early, make sure your alarm is on, and all those sorts of things. And then once you're done, once you execute the plan, executing the plan is also, processing it is also part of the execution of the plan. Once you've done processing, evaluate your plan, make sure that, you know, you try and list down which ones failed, which ones you need to improve on. And then lastly, you know, evaluate your work. Like you see if you improved on the previous work that you have, or, you know, if there's something that you don't like in terms of like the shoot itself or the image itself or the raw file itself, then you know what to work on in the next trip. Yeah, so this is pretty much my workflow. I was like I know we're pressed for time, so I would just wanted to go through this like as fast as I can.
No, you're doing good. The concept of evaluating your work, I've heard some different ideas of approaching that. So a lot our most of us as artists, our inclination is as soon as we finish our work, that's when we're evaluating it. We come home, we take a look at our shots and we're evaluating in that moment. But I've talked to several people, several photographers who they put their work aside. They maybe don't even load it on the computer for a week to a month to kind of get a little bit of emotional distance so they can be a little bit more pragmatic in their evaluation. Do you do it right away, or is it something that you do a little bit over time?
Well, you have to do it like in a span of a short time, because like if you do it right away, I mean, there's like mistakes when you do the shoot, right? That's
Well,
different. Like you shoot and then there's like a lot of dust spots. Okay, so I mean, there's a wrong angle. That's fine, right? Like you evaluate that immediately, but you only learn when you compare your current work to your previous work, because you distance yourself, as you mentioned, right? Because right now, like if I create this work, I would think that this is really awesome, right? Like this is great. I like this is how I process it. But maybe in a month from now it would be different, right? Maybe I would have like another opinion. Like if I tend to do that, like evaluate my previous works, like my previous self, right? I
Mhm.
look at my works like 2 years ago and I would just like some of them are like made me cringe. Sometimes, you know, I would feel like it's whoa, at that time it's awesome, like I like this very much. But you know, as you learn and gain more experience, you'll notice that my highlights are blown here, but you know, I don't know, I liked it before. You know, you get to see those errors, you know, as much as you like them before, you'll then kind of step back and realize that there's a lot of improvement that you need, and then you know it will keep you humble, right? You'll start to
True.
look at your current work and then take a step back. Even if you know you still don't have like fresh ideas, you won't take that as like your best work yet. You'll still strive to do something better because of that kind of humility.
Absolutely. Well, I find that something that happens with me is, when I'm out shooting, especially if I go out with a concept in mind and I make that happen, I get really excited about the process. And sometimes I'm so excited about the process and the work that I put into them. Maybe the images weren't as good overall as I thought. And when I look at them a month or a year down the road, I'm like, okay, I was just more excited about the process than I was about the image. And then there's other times I go back and I look at an old batch of images and I go, okay, why did I see how good this one was? I totally skipped over it. And then you find something, so one of those hidden gems. That's always fun too.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with that, right? So there are a lot of instances in my career that I thought it was a bad image, but then like some idea struck, or some inspiration, or some concept just struck, and I just figured, oh, this is something good, which is something that I would like show you in the presentation a bit later on.
Okay. So do you have any editing that you want to show us? Did you want to pop into Luminar AI and show us a little bit of how you work?
So that was the next, like, let me share my screen. That was the next oops, let me just move it here. All right. So I wanted to kind of quickly, can I share my, you can still see my screen, right?
Yeah, and I see a snowy
Okay.
landscape with a couple of trees.
Okay. No. So this, can you see my screen now? No, I'm
Yeah,
showing
I see it.
from, okay.
No, I
Oh,
see
no.
Luminar AI.
Okay, wait. Let me just give you like a, a glimpse, right?
Okay.
Um, so this is one of the, you can see my screen now?
Yes, and
Okay,
I see
cool.
your browser.
So this is a series of work that I did back in 2020 called Beyond Whiteout. So I always come up with a concept and then create the body of work. So just to give you like a glimpse of it, so this is the theme, right? It's muted colors, not too much action there. It's just like two subjects or a subject in the middle, and then it's just right there. So this one is part of that series. Oops, sorry, I need to share my screen again. Okay, there you go. All right, so this one is part of that series. This is part of beyond whiteout. So I'll show you like before and after. So this is what it looked like when I was shooting it. This is the raw file. So as you notice, right, I mentioned earlier that sometimes the weather will not really agree with you. So this is shot in a like, strong blizzard. So I had to like shoot it very quickly and then get inside the van. So it's not as crispy as it looks. And this is the final image with all the edits, right? So I don't do much editing. I just try to keep it simple because like my style and my bodies of work are centralized into more of minimalist landscapes. But the first thing I always do is go to optics and click the auto distortion corrections and chromatic aberrations, because most of these errors come from the distortion of the lens. Like I'll remove this and I'll show you. So you'll see that there's a tree here and there's this, there's a lot of errors in the images. If I click on auto distortion corrections, it will remove this edge here. Wait, you know what? Let me just show you this one. I'll turn off the mask so you'll see it. 1 second. There you go.
So you have even though it's a very simple minimalistic look, you have quite a few steps that you go through to get to your final product.
Yeah. But mostly I work with details and light because okay. So there you go. Can you see like the vignette here at this part? Like there's some vignetting on the upper right hand side and this tree right here, which usually you would erase this, but you can easily fix that with distortion corrections. So when you click that, it's just gone. Like it's an easy fix. So this is the first thing that I do whenever I open an image.
One thing worth mentioning with that is that works with raw files. If you're bringing in a JPEG or a TIFF, those options are not there. So that's just for a raw file.
Yes, raw files. Yes, correct. Once this is done, I go through light, and this is where I make most of my edits. You know what? Let's just turn everything off just so it would be easier. Oops. Structure, color, details. That's it. Okay, so okay, so basically this is what I've edited. So I've added the exposure. Mostly I work with contrast to make sure like the subject pops out. So contrast, and I always make sure that the highlights are not blown. In this case, like it is blown, but we'll remediate this in a couple of more steps. So once I'm satisfied with the, let me just put like zero exposure. So this is what it would look like, right? In zero exposure. So once I am happy with the base edit on light, I will then go through, that's the only time I go through enhance, structure, and details.
Okay.
So for accent AI, I just make sure that the subject pops out and this one becomes much more visible, right? If I put this on 0, like it's like barely visible, right? In the edits that we did. So I use accent AI to make sure this pops out and this also pops out. There you go. So the details in the front also would look awesome. So I don't have any specific numbers. I just use the sliders based on the actual image because you'll always depend on the raw file when you edit an image. So even if I use templates, like I create a specific template based on a body of work. So let's say, for example, this is the first time I'm editing this. Whatever I finish, this will become the base template of all the images I take for that trip for a body of work, right? So yeah, I just use the sliders and then see where it lands. And then if I'm happy with that, I move to the next one. So like I mentioned earlier, I am quite particular in terms of the details, because when you print this, like let's say for example, if you print it on 20 by 20, a lot of people would like see it up front, and they would examine the details of let's say for example this one, like oops, sorry, the branch that's sticking out, right?
Mhm.
So they would examine the most minute detail, and if it's oh, it's too yeah, if it's too if it's not sharp enough, you know, they'll have a lot of stuff to say, and it's not like really presentable, especially if you're going to be selling it online for prints, or if you're going to be going on an exhibit. So your images need to be printable in the largest format possible. So I try to make sure that I enhance the details as much as I can, because if you just use the raw file, it's not really that much enhanced. I mean, the camera and the lens will be a determining factor as well, and the conditions. But without editing, you know, it's not going to be that crisp. All right. So once I'm done with enhanced AI, I barely use composition AI, but sometimes I use that to just straighten the horizon. Like at this point, like I could just click that and I'm done. Um, and then for structure AI, like I would turn this on, like I would just show you. So structure AI also helps. Like for me, it makes the subject pop out much more. This creates a sort of dreamy look if you turn it to 0, but the foreground details is like intact. So I don't really like that effect. So I put it to around 50 to 30, depending on the image that I have. Just so the image here, like if you zoom here, you'll see that the details here are much cleaner compared to like what it was. Like I would like remove this, right?
Structure is such a powerful tool. It makes a huge difference, and especially in an image like this where you have those fine details in the background. We are getting a little bit short on time. I did want to ask you one question that we had in the Q&A. You mentioned that
Oh,
you use
sure,
a little
sure.
bit of selenium tone and other techniques to make it pop as your own. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's basically here in. Oops. What happened? Okay.
Vanelli, I think you shared your screen.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. So it's undertoning. There's shadows and highlights. Sorry,
Go ahead and
oh,
reshare
yeah.
your screen, Marvin. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
no problem. So it's in toning. You can also do with LUTs. Like if you have like LUTs ready, if you're migrating from another program, you can just put LUTs. That's fine. That could also work. But it's really here in toning. You could put like so you can change the hue. Like you could see the shadows here, right?
Mm-hmm.
This image is dominant, is highlights dominant, unlike the other one that I showed you, like the cityscape.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's shadows dominant, it would change. Like in this example, right? This is a shadow. Say for example, you want a bluish tone, you can just use the saturation and the hue to your liking, and then the amount. So it's basically just here. Say for example, I want highlights, and then I want a more of a sepia tone. I would just like try to like 1 second. Yeah, there you go. I'm going to find the warm tone here and then just put some saturation.
Okay.
There you go.
Then
I just put it on extreme, right?
Yeah. So then you would go ahead and save that as part of your template, and that would be your starting point for everything across that series. I like how that gives you continuity across an entire series of images. That's a great idea. We are out of time. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work and images?
Yeah. So you guys can check out my social media here if you're seeing my screen. So I have a YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Marvin Gray Photo. I have an Instagram, so it's instagram.com/Marvin Gray. You can also contact me by email, or you can visit my website, or you can slide some DMs if you have any questions at all. I love answering.
Awesome. And I want to remind everybody that Marvin has an awesome template pack available in the marketplace as well. It's called Monochrome Vision, and they're absolutely gorgeous templates. So I encourage you to go check those out, and keep in mind that we have the coupon code Deep Dive 2. That'll get you $10 off of just about anything in the marketplace, as well as the software. So check that out. And thank you so much for joining us today, Marvin. This was great. And you gave us a lot to think about in terms of pre-planning your workflow, not just what you do in the computer. And I love the continuity of images across a series. So thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate it.